Hi guys, this is AC, your host at the Sunday Show. Hi, welcome to another edition of Let's Give It a Voice at the Sunday Show. Today is a very, very special edition. I hope you all are doing well, keeping safe. Today is the first edition of a 4-part series on men's health, where we are going to look at the body, the soul, and the mind. So our first edition today is on suicide and depression in men. My name is AC Beng. I'm the host at the Sunday Show. Here we aim to give a voice to the voiceless. It's a voice of hope. It's a voice of advocacy to those issues which most often they are considered taboo, or those topics which are usually very, very emotional or sensitive to talk about. Today on our show, we have 3 guests. We have Dr. Ako Tabetah. We have Mr.Kofi Essilfie all the way from Ghana. Dr. Ako is from the US. And we have Mr. Cham Formoukum, who is in the UK. They are all young men, and we will be looking at men's health, talking about depression and suicide. Thank you once more. If you're joining, if you can hear me, you share the broadcast, because depression is one of those conditions where people suffer with it in silence, and it kills. Okay, guys, we are going to bring in our first guest who is already ready. And it's Dr. Ako Tabetah. Let's usher him in. Hi, Doctor. You're welcome on the Sunday Show.
Hello, the Sunday Show. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for honoring our invite. So our other guest, Mr. Kofi he's all the way in Ghana, so he's joining us very soon. He has a little bit of internet instability at the moment, and Mr. Cham Formoukum, he's also joining us very soon. Hi guys, thank you so much for joining. If you're just joining in, I'm AC, I'm the host at the Sunday Show, and today is the first edition of a 4-part series on men's health. We are going to be looking at the soul, the mind, and the body. June is Men's Health Month, and it's very, very necessary. Our health is a very important aspect of every human being, and most often you hear so many people, or we talk a lot about women's health. At times it feels as if the men's health has no significance, or it's not important at all. So that's why there's an awareness day, an awareness month, for people to come together and raise awareness and talk about those issues which men find them difficult to talk about. And that's why I, at the Sunday Show, teamed up with a few people, like Dr. Ako. So we have a 4-part series to talk about some of those issues men most often they are regarded as topics, or most often they find them uncomfortable to talk about. So for the first edition today, we are going to look at depression and suicide. Depression is a mental health condition that affects almost everybody. But sometimes it's very difficult to know if somebody has depression or not unless the person tells you. And unfortunately, most people consider our physical being more important than our mental being. So it's very necessary for each and every one of us to consider our mental health same as any medical condition, because our mental health should be equally as important as our physical health. So now we are going to bring in our next guest, with Mr. Kofi Essilfie, all the way from Ghana. You're welcome, sir, and thank you so much for honoring our invite. Can you hear us? It's Mr. Kofi Essilfie, all the way from Ghana. You're welcome. Okay. He's there, so we are going to wait for him to come on. So as we were saying, Doctor, are you ready? There's a noise behind your background. I'm not sure.
Yes, I'm not too sure where that's coming from.
Okay. Mr. Kofi is actually here, but his connection doesn't great at all. Okay, he's gone off. Sorry, guys, they seem to be having some internet connections, but we will continue because of recent incidents involving murder and suicide in Ohio, in the US. And coupled with the fact that June is Men's Health Awareness Month, at the Sunday Show, we thought it was a great idea for us to look at some of those things, some of those topics, some of those issues which are affecting men, which sometimes we don't really know why, we don't really know how they are affecting them, because sometimes the men are very good in masking. So it's good we give a voice to such topics. And one of like, you need to reduce one of your volumes. Right? Hi, Mr. Formoukum. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you for honoring our invite. So we are just doing some introduction at the moment. We're just introducing, and Mr. Essilfie is still going to come on. So we will just continue. Then when he comes in, we'll usher him into the broadcast as well. So thank you, guys. Can we just do a quick introduction, starting with you, Dr. Ako, and who is Dr. Ako Tabetah?
Hello, Ethan. Yes, my name is Ako Tabetah, medical doctor. I live in, Maryland. I work in Washington, D.C. in the core mental health agency called NDI Health Services, where
There seems to be a connection from.
I provide therapeutic sessions. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's breaking. I can hear you, but
Yes.
it's breaking.
Yes, I'm so sorry. It's having a bad connection, it seems. But if you can still hear me, I provide therapeutic sessions to mentally challenged patients. I also write course curriculum for clinical interventions in mental health according to the Departmental of Behavioral Health standards. I train staff and I also train staff on medication management, health and wellness pertaining to mental health, especially for mental health conditions like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and many others. So I'm very privileged to be here today to talk about depression and suicide, which are very important, topics which we should look into, especially at such a time as this. So thank you for having me on your show, Sam, on the Sandy Show.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. Cham, over to you. I know I've known you since we were a little boy, so I don't even like that, but go ahead. An introduction.
Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Dr. Ako. My name is Cham Formoukum, and I'm an agricultural research and development professional. I have experience in working in peace and security in northern Nigeria. I was there for 3 years, basically using agriculture as a tool for peace and security. And in the process of this work, which I've done extensively, I couldn't escape from the aspect of mental health and how the instability that is caused by the clashes between farmers and herders, or by the clashes caused by post-election violence and all those kind of things. They have a mental health impact on the communities around there. So that's where I've had much contact and much I became conversant with the concept of depression and the issues of mental health and how society looks at them. And as a development professional, it's an area that you really can't run away from, because basically everything you do touches on it, and it touches on everything generally. So yeah, that's the long and short of me, and I'm happy to be on the show.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for that introduction. So while we are waiting for Mr. Kofi to join us, so we will just continue. So on our show today, we are looking at suicide and depression, and we will be focusing on the reasons why somebody may be depressed, some of the causes of depression, how to manage depression, and even how to recognize someone who is depressed. So, Dr. Ako, let's start with you. We hear every day depression and depression. I had a conversation with my 10-year-old a few days ago, and to him, depression is when somebody is very, 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 very sad. That was his definition.
Yes.
So, let's go to the doctor.
The connection is so poor I can barely hear you. Can you just take the question again, please?
Okay, I said we are focusing today on depression and suicide. And depression affects almost everyone, but we hear every day about people being depressed. Yeah, at times you can. At times you can comment somebody who is depressed. At times you cannot. I was speaking with my 10-year-old a few days ago, and he describes depression as someone who is very, very, very sad. So, from a medical point of view, what is depression?
Yeah. Thank you. AC, depression is something which is very, very important. I call the symptoms of depression silent symptoms. If you are playing basketball and you sprain your ankle, you feel the pain, right? and you want to see a doctor, what you're going to do is, because of the pain, they're going to give you painkillers, or if you need orthopedic surgery to ensure that the knee is back to where it's supposed to be for you to get out there and perform on that basketball court for your team. You're going to have that surgery, so you are aware of what's going on. But depression is not like that. You see, just like we have many other mental health diagnoses, they are not like that. They are invisible. They are silent, but they kill. And that's why we need to talk about them. Now, you see, coming from Africa, I mean, I hardly knew anything about depression when I was in Africa. You know, it's either you're sad or you're not happy. The highest they can say is that you're moody. Get over it. You're going to be okay. But we need to talk about depression because depression is not something which affects just a few people or something which is particular to some races. It affects everybody. It therefore implies that our knowledge, attitude, and practice of depression in certain parts of that knowledge, attitude, and practice in certain parts of the world are very poor. You know, and people do not really understand what depression is. They don't understand what the symptoms of depression are. They don't understand what the types of depression are. They don't understand what the coping mechanisms for depression are. And when you do not understand something, a lack of knowledge, if you don't, what you don't understand can kill you, can affect you adversely. And that is why I am very excited to talk about depression. Depression is such a broad topic. What I've been privileged to train staff on this. It's so broad, including its management. But the first thing I want to start by defining depression. Depression is there is depression. There's clinical depression. I would like to term it that way. To have a definition of clinical depression, you're going to need at least 5 symptoms. Okay, and among all the symptoms you should have at least one of these two, which is a depressed mood, or a lack of interest in things that you used to enjoy doing. So 5 symptoms within a 2-week period, with at least one of them being a depressed mood or a lack of interest, in the things that you used to enjoy. That's depression. And there are many types of depression which might be going through before I get the symptoms. There are many types of depressive disorders. Okay, we're talking about a major depressive. Yeah, I mean, the major depressive disorder, which is at the prototype out there, which is the one that everybody talks about, that we're more used to. Then you have a persistent depressive disorder, which is also called dysthymia. You have a manic depressive disorder, manic depressive disorder, what you also call bipolar disorder, and then you have seasonal affective disorder, of course, which occurs when the days during fall and winter are shortened. And then you have depressive disorders, which I will say occur in women more, like PMDD, which is a more complicated form of premenstrual disorder. So I just want to give you the types of depression, and looking at those types, you see there's so many types of depression. But we are talking about people not even being aware that anything like depression exists. Then how can you be aware that you have these types of depression, types of these symptoms? So looking at these types and definition, I believe that we can start having an understanding of what we're talking about. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you so much for that. I think Kofi has just come in, so I'll see if he can hear us. Hi, sir. Excuse me. If you're there, let us know. This connection is very poor. So, yeah, Cham, you mentioned earlier that you've had experience while working in, I think you said in Nigeria, and you discovered that there was most of your employees were affected somehow with depression, or their mental health was a bit unstable. How was that? How did that manifest itself?
Oh, okay. Just to be clear, I worked on projects on preventive violent extremism, and one of the fallout of violent extremism is depression, which goes unnoticed and untreated for a long time. So
Yeah.
it was not my colleagues, it was the beneficiaries from the projects which we were carrying out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just for clarification.
Okay.
And thank you very much, Doctor, for that explicit. I actually had to take a pen and take a couple of notes for the med school I'll never attend. Most of the times, depression manifests itself in different ways. I'm not going to speak from a medical perspective because I don't have that qualification, but I'll speak from a development perspective. Um, uh, I want to talk about basically what we experience because we are talking about depression in the context of men today,
Yeah.
and if we are waiting to see how depression manifests in men, we will always write out men as depression free because it comes covertly, and many people, first of all, don't admit that they are a potential candidate, or if I should use that word, for depression.
Yeah.
And some people are not even aware of the concept of depression. So it's a bigger problem than we see because it's a problem that people, men out there, hardly know or admit that they have.
Right.
So every time I want to look at depression, I want to look at it from the point of view of society. You know, there are some disturbing facts out there, and I will use these facts as things that will provide some sort of evidence of the existence of chronic depression, if I may say, in the
Yeah.
society. Because if I want to go by what people portray, many people will not even admit that they have this depression. But you realize that men, the atmosphere of today's world is structured such that men go through these things without even having a pause to think about it. Unlike women who are expressive, men are not. So they go through all these mental health and depression issues without knowing. And it's the society today the society today is contributing in putting that pressure on the man, you know, and that's why we have a lot of issues today. We have issues of men dying earlier. On an average, men die generally earlier than women. You have situations of men being disproportionately affected by a lot of ills in the society than women, and it's because women have taken a stand to identify what the problem is and to work towards it, but men have not yet come to that point. There's a lot I have to say about that particular aspect, but I'll just leave it there for now.
All right. So thank you so much, Cham, for mentioning. One of the things I've picked up from what you've said is the fact that there's lack of acceptance, and once there's no acceptance in a situation, once you don't accept the situation you are going through, it's very difficult to have healing or to have treatment. And and again, because women are more expressive than men, it's easier to detect that a woman is depressed than a man. And I don't know, doctor, why is it that in this area men do not talk about it a lot? Is it because of a man thing, or is it that they are ignorant about depression? Is it that
Yeah,
they
yeah,
do not?
that's a very good one. That's a very good one. Now, AC, I'm just going to break it down. I don't want to talk like a doctor. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Because
was enjoying your doctor
when
part.
I talk like a doctor, it becomes too clinical. But I'm going to go out there. I even do that when I train my staff, nurses, clinical coordinators, and everything. I like to break it down to the basic thing because how we interact. Now, when you were growing up, I'm talking about to my brother here, Cham, when you were growing up, you discovered that some of our uncles or our fathers made us to understand that you cannot express your feelings. It makes you look weak. Men do not have to expressing the way it makes you look weak. You have to suppress it. If you can't express it, you are going to suppress it. Men don't cry. I grew up believing that men do not cry, and crying is a show of weakness. And in the American society where I live today, there are many men who believe that crying is a sign of weakness. I see patients who are 45, 50 years old who still believe that to be a man, you can express your emotions. So I'm good. You haven't paid a mortgage for 5 months. You go and hang out with your friends who have paid their mortgage for 5 months. You're sharing a drink with them. They say, "Hey, Mike, how you doing?" So I'm good. I'm game. What's going on? Everything is fine. You have a chronic health condition. You don't want to talk to anybody. Men do not want to express themselves. Men bottle it up while women share. Women share. That woman is going to come out. She's going to curse you. She's going to curse at you. She's going to scream. She's going to cry. She's going to yell. She's going to do all those things that men don't do. You see, man is macho. Macho is testosterone. I am the man. I don't want to hear anything. I want to walk around feeling that everybody knows it's good, and they want to discover committed suicide. And it's like end of a rope. You are on the front page of the Fortune magazines. You're on the front page of Ebony. You are an actor. You are Heath Ledger, one of my greatest icons, and you are acting such a great role in the Batman. And then one day I wake up and discover that he took his life, overdose. So you need to ask yourself, there's something that's going on. Why is it that even though women are more depressed than men commit suicide more than women? And that is a very interesting thing, being that depression is is something that a lot of people go through before they think of committing suicide. So it's like that pathway. Why do men don't communicate? They do not have good communication mechanisms. Talk about work. Talk about pressures of life. Talk about challenges. There's something I always say, and I like to quote the scripture. It says, "Man born of a woman is of a few days and full of trouble. Man born of a woman is of a few days and full of trouble." So I'm trying to say that in this world where we all live, everybody is going to face challenges. We're going to have trouble, whether you like it or not. So you cannot wake up one morning and pray, "God, help me that I should not have challenges. God, help me, I should not have adversity." God will never answer that question, because it is not possible. Challenges, we are going to have adversities, but the question is, how do you cope with your adversity? Your challenges? Number B, who lost his number A, lost his job, and long. I'm saying, those who fired me, I'm going to file a lawsuit again.
Wow, there's a technical hitch there.
Me, and it's difficult to get a job. Different mindsets, different people. Man number A goes on, sends out the resume, talk to friends, man number 2 is put on the couch, becomes the couch, watches TV. A different mindset. How do you cope to that job loss? Man number A suddenly gets that job going, and he finally gets his job, and he's ongoing. He even gets a better job, And then man B is pessimistic, is depressed. How do you cope with adversity? That is where we are right now. How do men cope? Do men really know how to cope? So I talked about communication. So I talked about work and family. And then one important thing is isolation. Because we talk about depression. Isolation is that middle ground between depression and suicide. When we sit on that platform, we take isolation to be a template on which we're going to build something. The only thing you're going to build the only thing anybody who is depressed is going to build on a template or a platform of isolation is suicide, or something like suicide, or a suicide attempt. So
we are still going to get to the correlation. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
We are still going to get into the correlation between suicide and depression. Our next guest is waiting. So let me see if his connection is good now. Bear with me. Okay. Well, we can continue. I know I've heard of so many cases of individuals who are depressed, then they end up committing suicide. I'm thinking of, is it Robin Williams who died a few years ago? I'm not sure if he committed suicide, and there have been quite a few people, like especially celebrities, who have been depressed for a very long time, and they end up dying, and usually the mode of dying is suicide. So I've always wondered. What is that relationship between depression and suicide? Because I don't think it's everyone that commits suicide, but what actually pushes someone to go to the point of wanting to take their life? Cham, would you be able to speak before Doctor comes in?
So thanks for that quick question. The problem here is we are skipping a very delicate part of this, and the part of it is the part where we are talking about depression and talking about coping mechanism, but we are ignoring the atmosphere where we are, or the environment, and we are ignoring the role of the environment in the depression. Because no matter how targeted the coping strategies, how effective the coping strategies can potentially be, if the atmosphere remains, it's difficult to go away. If you say you're going to target the things that trigger your anxiety, but you're still in that same atmosphere, and there are certain things that trigger your anxiety in that atmosphere, those efforts are in a waste. The society where we live today, why men continue to suffer depression is because men are continuously being disproportionate victims in a lot of ills which are being neglected. So men are neglecting their pain, women are neglecting men's pain, children are neglecting men's pain. You know, we are in a system where people are not focusing on people don't recognize that for a man to feel pain is legitimate. Let's look at a couple of things. Men suffer more and are way more victims of workplace deaths. Men are way more victims of dirty, dangerous, and physically demanding jobs. Men are way more victims of forced military services across the world. And you know the trauma that war comes with. Men are way more victims of suicide, as he mentioned, and non-domestic violence, mass shootings, and things like that. Men generally die early, like I earlier mentioned. And men are way more victims of contemporary issues which we may ignore, but are actually affecting a man's brain. Things like a man is way more likely to lose custody of his kids in our contemporary society. A man is way more likely to be more damaged in a situation of a separation or a divorce, whether legally or illegally, whether by the law or not. A man is almost always the villain when it comes to alimony laws. You know, pay this person for this and pay and pay and pay and pay. Most of these court cases, they don't end well for men. I'm talking about contemporary society, and I'm talking about it because that's it's development, that is my area. So I won't speak medically, but I'll speak in terms of society. And then there is the new trend. There is the new era of the sudden misandry about men. So we understand that women have been historically oppressed and marginalized, but in this new bid to stop oppression of women, we find majority of people turning the blame to men. So they are trying to solve one problem, which is a very legitimate problem, the oppression of women, by creating an entire one, which is the sole blame on the man. So you see able men moving around today with guilt faces and victim hearts. They are scared to take steps. They are scared to express themselves because it is now fashionable for you to turn around and accuse a man for any form of violence or oppression, especially when it touches a woman. forgetting to know that in women and women relationships, there is far more per capita violence or per capita oppression in women and women relationships than in women and men relationships. And in men and so if we don't address this kind of social ills as human problems, we continue to address them as man problems. The man is always going to be under that an invisible hand, an invisible pressure in society. You know, men have to worry about things which women will not imagine. You know, but most of the times this worry is neglected. This worry is considered as not that it's small, but there is the concept of man expandability. So the man is able. The man is able. Whenever you find yourself in a problem, the first thing to think about is the man is able. A plane takes off for an experiment in space. 18 men are in the plane, and the government refuses to focus on those people, saying the man is able. But if that plane was made up of women, and the government does not go after those women to find out where they are, it's going to be a total chaotic situation, you know. And don't get me wrong, the problem of oppression, especially in our society, is an increasing one, and it's a dangerous one. We have to protect our women, we have to protect our girl children. But if we in the process invalidate the pain of men, if we in the process transfer the burden of change solely to the man, then we will continue to see increased levels of depression and suicide amongst men. And if we are really committed to battling this, then we have to rethink our approach. We have to look at these things as human problems and not as man problems. When we have cleared that atmosphere, then we can now start tackling things which Doctor was saying, coping strategies. What are the things that trigger your anxiety, trigger your depression? How can we handle them? Knowing that our efforts are going to be effective because we have set the stage properly for people to heal from whatever internal wounds which they are suffering from.
Wow, thank you so much. That's an eye opener. I mean, I never looked at it that way. So, which means in another way of putting it, one way of us solving the problems of depression in our society, we have to target the cause, the main cause. And one of the causes, from what you've said, Cham, is the environment, which
yes.
But I would like to put it back. How do you solve this? Because I know somebody once said most of the problems that women face are caused by men. And I can't speak for every other woman, but I know quite a few women, if they say they are depressed or they have depression and you ask them, one or two of them will give a reason that has to do with the mind, right?
Yeah.
So how do we solve that? We know that every man or every woman, even children, they get depressed. Unfortunately, we verbalize it more than you guys. So if you cannot verbalize, you cannot tell us your own pain, how do we know? I know that sometimes if you are ill, as a doctor, Dr. Ako, if I'm ill, when I come to you, I tell you I'm in pain. One of the things you ask me is where do you feel pain, right? Where does it hurt? I have to show somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So that you should be able to treat me. But if I cannot point where it's paining, or where it's paining, or where it's hurting, how do you help me? So someone said a few days ago that if you are depressed and whatever or whoever is causing that depression, get rid of it. Get rid of it. So let's welcome Mr.Kofi Essilfie. I think he has a problem with his. Okay. Oh, his mic isn't connected. So can you hear us? Anyway, can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. So, doctor, what do you think about that? If you are somewhere and it's making you depressed, or somebody's making you depressed, you get rid of it. How does you get rid of it? So which means if you're living in a household, let's say for example, Cham, you are in Bamenda with mom and dad, and they are causing some problems, you are getting depressed, you get rid of your parents, right?
Oh, absolutely not. Let me just say that the idea that if you're sick and I ask you, you should be able to show me where what is hurting you, or else you're not ready to solve the problem. It's a dangerous idea because it plays on the natural advantages of women. Women are naturally expressive. Okay, men are not naturally expressive. So if a patient comes in and that patient can talk, great, wonderful. Doctor will attend to that person. But if that patient is unable to express themselves normally, for example, dementia or Down syndrome or something, you have to learn their language. You have to learn their language. You have to learn how they express themselves. It's not that they are not expressing themselves. They are just speaking a different language. And if we can be patient with men, as we have been patient with women lately, I mean, the fight is way not over. It's not, in fact, it has not started. The fight against oppression in our society, especially of women. But there are some things there which, if we learn and we are able to practice even on the man, then the society will go a long way. If we learn to be patient with the man as we've been patient with the woman, as we've heard out the woman, as we've gone all out to help the woman, the man is going to be okay. And trust me, because many women believe that the man is part of the problem, then making the man okay is a legitimate path to the solution. It's a legitimate path. So men may not be as expressive in the same way that women express themselves. But trust me, every man has a language.
Yeah.
Learn the language and understand what they are saying. That's the patience we need to. Because right now, when somebody is depressed, the person is sick.
Yes.
The person is sick. So you can't cast the person away if you are on, and then you can't stop loving people because the people are problematic. I believe that you can love people from a distance, but you can't just generally stop loving people because they are having one problem or the other, So we have to be intentional about this, and we have to be patient as well. Yeah. It's a long process, and we all together, I'm sure we can make it work for the society generally, not just for men.
Oh yes, we can, and it has to start somewhere, and starting by giving it a voice makes a big difference, because we know that what we give a voice to has the power not only to change people's lives, but it has power to save people's lives as well. Because I know that most of the people who have maybe taken their lives because of depression, if they had given a voice, or if someone had given a voice to the difficulties they were facing, I'm sure they would have gone to that extent of taking their lives. That said, we know that our Cameroonian society in Ohio, in the US, they are actually grieving. In fact, each and every Cameroonian in the diaspora is grieving at the moment because of the incident that occurred. I think it was last Sunday, where someone killed his wife and killed himself. So clearly, if you look critically, or maybe from either from a medical point of view or from an emotional or psychological point of view, you will know that there was actually a reason behind that. So that brings me back to my question of what is the relationship between depression and suicide, Dr. Ako?
Yes, thank you, AC. And Cham, I really got your points, man. You're like trying to help us, the men, because sometimes we're not being understood a lot. That is one way to go about it. Although there are many risk factors for depression, and quite, one of the ways of managing depression is to understand those risk factors and ensure that people do not stay in that place where those risk factors could be exacerbated to such a point that it could cause serious symptoms of clinical depression and then down the road cause complications. There is a very strong correlation between depression and suicide, going back to the question of AC. And I want to first say that if you look at the symptomatology of both, or you look at the if you look at the risk factors, there are certain risk factors of depression and suicide overlap. So some things which are certain things which are the risk factors of depression could be the risk factors of suicide. But which I want to mention there because that is where I will start from, about the family history of mental illness. You know, if you have a family history of people who are depressed in your family, it means that somebody is at a higher risk of being depressed. Just like if you have a family history of people committed suicide within a family, there is an increased risk of someone committing suicide in that family. So family history is important. That link is very powerful between depression and suicide in terms of family history. Lack of social support. You know, when there is a lack of social support, people do not have therapies, they don't have psychiatrists to go to, they don't have people to talk to, they don't have things which are set up to help. We've found that it is very easy for depressed individuals to attempt committing suicide. And I just want to mention something right here while talking about suicide. There is a correlation between an attempt to commit suicide and suicide itself. You know, talking about men and women, I want to just focus on this. I mentioned prior that women, since we are talking about suicide in men, you know, and then we talk about women too by the side. Women are depressed, more depressed than men. That is a very one important point. Women are being found to more depressed. Of course, the reason being hormonal imbalances in women. You know, we're talking about, for example, we talk about menstruation. We talk about menopause, premenopausal periods, miscarriages. We talk about perinatal depression. You talk about PMDD. There are many hormonal imbalances which take place, you know, when a woman gives birth or 12 months after birth or while she's pregnant, as in perinatal depression. PMDD, which is you know, which is very serious among some women. You know, we talk about those imbalances when during the menopause. Then what we are used to talking about when we talk to someone is moody. She's moody. She's depressed. Of course, mood, you know, depression, like disorder of mood, affect. So we are talking about something which can affect women. But talking about suicide, there is that relationship that's very strong. Why is it that women who are more depressed than men, you know, commit suicide less than men? I just want to say something here. Women have been found to attempt to commit suicide than men. That's very important. Women have been found to attempt to commit suicide than men, but men have been found to commit suicide more than men. So we discovered that women did not commit suicide, though they were on the verge of. And the question is why? You know, is it because of the means, the lethal weapons available? Is it because they lack the courage? Is what people ask, you know. So men commit suicide more than women. Now, the things there are many precipitating factors which can cause people who are depressed to commit suicide. Yeah. We're talking about things like divorce. Okay, divorce is one of such. Or separation. You know, we're in a relationship and the fiance takes off. You know, it's a precipitating factor. Those factors that can trigger, you know, a depressed person to commit suicide. We're talking about financial loss. I want to focus on financial loss. A very important one we're talking about because we're in the period or era of the pandemic. Now, I want to say something that's very important here. It takes about 18 to 24 months after an economic downturn for suicide rates to increase and spike. What I'm saying is we are in the pandemic right now, you know, and it's been 18 months since the pandemic. This is studies which have been shown. So we are looking forward to that taking place about 18 months from now. Another important thing, relationship now, somebody who is depressed or loses their job, financial difficulties as a risk factor of depression, which can correlate to suicide. Now, if for every 1% increase, 1% increase in unemployment, right, there is a 0.75% increase in suicide rate. I'll repeat. Studies have shown that for every 1% increase in unemployment rate, there is a 0.75% increase in suicide rate. That's very important. So there is a pandemic going on. 50 million Americans have lost their jobs. There are about 300 million Americans. Not everybody here is working in the United States of America. Not everybody has a job. So I'm talking about the job population. About 50 million Americans have lost their job.
Yeah.
Now, that implies that we are looking into, right now, a lot of people are depressed in America, in the United States of America. That's a fact. Disorder of mood, people might not be able to express it. They might not be able to articulate it. They're depressed. Social skills. I'm trying to explain that now from this psychological perspective. We are social beings. We get out there. We interact. We talk to each other. I hug Auntie Bernie when Auntie Bernie comes to the house. When Uncle Charles shows up, Uncle, how are you doing? We gather around for the barbecue. We do stuff. We are social beings. Get out there for a drink with friends after work. We carry out what we call social interactions. Human beings are meant to interact socially. And then suddenly the pandemic shows up. We can't do any of such things. You cannot give me a hug. You cannot shake my hand. You cannot hang out with your friends. You cannot go and watch your favorite movie after work. The very coping mechanisms to stress that we encounter every day, because we encounter stress every day. The very coping mechanisms to stress, that is going out to watch a movie, going to the library, going to sit in the park and just seeing people, have been taken away from us. And to culminate to that level of stress, a lot of people have lost their jobs. They are on unemployment. So there is this whole spectrum. There's this whole thing out there which is gray in terms of things are looking gloomy, and so we have people who are depressed. And so what are we talking about? What is the potential of people committing suicide? People are already committing suicide in huge numbers, underreported. So we have precipitating factors which cause people to commit suicide. And then another important thing I want to talk about, we've talked about sex, which I've talked about female commit suicide are more depressed than male, but male commit suicide more than female. Is it because of accessibility of lethal means to do that? Is that more courageous to do it? We're talking about age, elderly people, who are easily depressed and will commit suicide more than the younger age population. That's another important factor. Of course, elderly people, now it depends on the culture. My friend Cham talked about environment. Environment is everything too. You talk about. I want to talk about the environment, culture, and the United States of America, because I live in the United States, so I can talk about what I see. We have elderly people who are kept in nursing homes. We don't have nursing homes in Africa. I know that I'm building a house in Africa. I'm Uncle Nti or Uncle Batu. I'm going to build one little room for him to stay there, and the little ones are going to make sure that he has his food to eat. That is the African model of things. And we are the social security number to our family members in Africa in terms of culture, cultural perspective. In the United States of America, there is a social security system which is in place. You have SSI, you have disability, and then at student age, you can go to a nursing home when you qualify. But that is where it is. An elderly person being in a nursing home in the United States of America makes them to feel isolated, away from the family. Of course, they're away from their family and then a nursing home simply because they believe, according to this context, this culture, that is the right place for him to be so that he can get all the help and all the care that he needs. But the suicide rate among the elderly people is increased because of that. Social isolation, because we are human beings who respond to love, who respond to warmth, who respond to environment, who respond to grandchildren when they're elderly, who respond to family, who respond to cousins, and those needs, they are not there around them. So all of these factors will precipitate, suicide in already depressed individuals. So I can go on and on and on, AC. There is a huge relationship between the two. And just as I was talking about, isolation is a huge one. isolation. Please, I'm saying this while I'm on this platform. For those going through the pandemic, please, if you have to scream, scream. If you have to shout, shout. Call up, hit up somebody and talk to the person. There is no social isolation on the phone. You have access to a phone, pay your phone bill. Your phone is one of your very, very good friends during this pandemic and during this time. Talk to somebody about something. Okay? Men, swallow your pride. Take down that testosterone and shove it down the stomach somewhere. All right? Take it away and talk to someone. You see, men don't talk to people. I see so many clients and they reveal that they don't talk. If I could talk, oh, I feel better just talking about it. Let's do like the women do, I would say. Let's cry once in a while, Let's cry. I cry. If I'm overwhelmed, I go and cry to God. I cry to God. I cry. I need you here. And I feel better. It makes me feel good. Doesn't make me less of a man. Share with others. I know it is very tough. We live in a very stressful environment. We live during very stressful times, but we can share. We can talk to people. Let people feel you. Call someone that you trust, all right, and reveal something to them. They're going to keep it. They're not going to rat you out. They're not going to snitch on you. All right, just say something, all right, but do not keep it to yourself. In Africa, where I come from, it is very tough because when we talk of social interactions, it took me a long time before I could get a hug from anybody. We don't hug in Africa. The culture of hugging is not there. And it's a good thing. It's a feel-good thing. It is that serotonin, feel-good stuff. It's that norepinephrine. It is that dopamine, that feel-good thing. And I'm talking about neurotransmitters, because neurotransmitters in the brain will explain, depression, because we have serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine, which are decreased in the brain, and these are decreased in depressed patients. So this serotonin, a feel-good hormone, and the norepinephrine for fight and flight, and there's dopamine. They make you feel better. There's something about them. When they're decreased, you don't feel that same joy. You don't do the things that you used to do, that you love doing, going to watch a basketball game or going to turning on the television to watch Cameroon beat Nigeria, as we have been used to seeing Cameroon beat Nigeria. To all my Nigerian friends, you know how it is, right? Or you are not going to see your favorite basketball player, Michael Jordan, play, or you're not going to see Joel Embiid, do something in the NBA. The things you love doing, you stop doing them. Please watch out, you out there at home. Watch out for your child. Watch out for your mother, your sister, anybody who suddenly stops doing what they like doing. That is a very, very important sign right there. What they love doing, reading books, and I don't want to do it anymore, or I don't want to eat that food. Things that they love doing, they stop doing. There are subtle signs out there that we miss every day, and then people just, they suffer in silence. We don't want that to happen. Now, we are having a decrease in, or somebody begins to sleep too much, or does not sleep at all at night, like less insomnia. Yeah, so it can be both. It's either they're sleeping too much suddenly, or they're not sleeping. They wake up early in the morning at 3 a.m. Your husband is pacing around the house at 3 a.m. in the morning. Oh, never used to pace around, or your wife or your son sleeps till 10 o'clock. It's not talking, it's moody, it's silent. Or maybe they begin to eat too much. Or they do not eat at all, they stop eating. There's always one or the other. You should watch out for that. And then another important thing that can exist between both in depression and suicide is low self-esteem. Low self-esteem is one topic that we can really handle one day and talk about. Because a lot of people with low self-esteem do not understand that they have low self-esteem, and they do not understand how it impacts them in life every day, at their job, in their marriages, with their children, relationship, when they interact in public. That low self-esteem kicks in, and lack of motivation, the lack of self-belief in yourself, feeling that you are nobody, you are nothing. If you see somebody who says things like, I do not believe people love me. I do not believe that, I'm important to anybody. I do not believe that I can do anything valuable that anybody can appreciate. He might have a big house, but he's saying that. He might have a big car, but he's saying that. Because if you want to talk about depression and suicide, it is not about the rich or about the poor. It's about everybody. Because the rich are depressed and the rich commit suicide too. The poor are depressed and the poor commit suicide too. So we watch out for words like these and things that people say. Look out for that child who is being bullied at school. All right, that child is being bullied at school all the time. That child, there have been cases where children who are bullied have taken their lives. True. So that child is being bullied at school, a traumatic experience, comes back home, refuses to eat, doesn't sleep well. What for little signs, out there. So suicide in its broader context, affects everybody. But when it comes to men, which we're talking about suicide today, that isolation, that man thing, that I'm the man. You don't worry, I got it. Women share, men bottle up. They bottle up. The man will bottle it up. You see a bottle of Coke, you shake that bottle of Coke, you keep shaking it. The pressure is building because the man is bottling up feelings, he's bottling up struggles, he's bottling up vicissitudes, he's bottling up adversity, he's bottling up disappointments, he's not sharing them. All right. The wife did that to him, the children, he's all stressed out. And then what is shaking him? More stress is shaking him up. He has bottled it up and stress is shaking him up. Financial difficulties, all those things are coming and shaking. And then one day, as he's shaking it up, what happens? There's a degree of maximum disorder from within, which I call entropy. That entropy is building up from within, degree of maximum disorder. Everything is chaotic. And then one day he explodes. He's going to take a gun and blow up a whole building. He's going to take a gun and do something funny. Or he's going to kill himself because he's in a lonely place where he bottled up so much and refused to share, and isolation kicked in, and slowly he walked to. That's suicide. It happens. And I heard about a Cameroonian brother in the United States who committed suicide, and I was talking to somebody. I said, I do not know the role that the pandemic has in that decision that he made, because the pandemic, according to my belief, must have created a place where his coping mechanisms were really poor, because a lot of people have been disappointed. A lot of people have been cheated. A lot of people have had broken marriages, but committed suicide. Maybe the pandemic was just one straw too much. One straw too much. He could not just take it anymore. And he said, this is it. This is done. I am going to do this and that. And he acted in that split second. And sometimes we try to pretend as if we understand where the mind of somebody who is depressed and is committing suicide is. I cannot pretend to understand. I've never been in that place. I do not know how it is. But what I'm saying is that if we have better coping skills, if men can focus on what are the coping skills that are helping not to commit suicide or helping with depression, it is going to solve most of the issues that men have when they are dealing with depression. So I am strong. I'm strong, but I'm not so strong that I'm not going to cry, on the shoulders of the Lord Jesus Christ. I'm not so strong that I'm not going to give my wife a hug and shed a tear once in a while. She's not going to look at me to be less. That is what makes me strong, because when I do that, I leave the house. I leave the house very strong. I have to go and face a lot of adversity out there in the city. From the time I get into that car, I don't know which cop is going to stop me on the road. I don't know what's going to happen at work. I don't know what's going to happen when I come back home. So there's so much that we're faced with that we need to deal with, things that will keep our minds intact every day. I'm going to wake up tomorrow to a new challenge. I'm going to wake up tomorrow to a new adversity. I'm going to wake up tomorrow to something which I never planned for. But how am I going to cope to that? How am I going to handle it? That's what makes a whole difference. So I made up my mind already that I'm going to face an adversity tomorrow. That is already a good place to start from. So I'm going to start from there, and I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to deal with it. It doesn't matter what it comes to, I'm going to deal with it. So I'm encouraging the men out there. You are leaders of the home, on which there's so much pressure, all right? I'm encouraging us because for some of you, some have not paid their rent for 3 to 4 months. That rent has accumulated, but it's not going anywhere. So by the time that you start paying them the next 2 or 3 months, because of this pandemic, you're going to have like thousands of dollars out there, and then you have to do an installment to add to the monthly rent you're going to pay when you start from September, October, November. It's not going anywhere. So how are you going to deal with that? It's money. Okay? It comes and goes. All right. So she ditched you, she left you, you broke up, and you were so attached to her emotionally, and you cannot take it anymore despite all the sacrifices you did. You can cope with that too. There's got to be something more to life than the adversity which I'm going through right now. That gives me the courage to tell myself that I can take care of the situation. because there's got to be more to life. Or somebody's going to make fun of me, then now that's the person with the low self-esteem, because we get to that point, everything is interconnected. Or what are they going to think about me? What are they going to say? I have to sell that beautiful car that you bought for me, and we celebrated, everybody saw it. Deal with your thoughts without thinking too much about what somebody else is going to say about you, because people are going to say something anyway, no matter what you do. Try it. Win $500 million today, and people are going to talk about you. They're going to say you sold somebody so much with that money. People will say something about you no matter what you try. So you have to insulate yourself from the stuff that people say about you that bring adversity to yourself, and deal with it so that you keep moving on with your life. Low self-esteem has a very crucial role to play. So we can go on and on and on. AC is such a broad thing, and it's so deep, And as I always make fun, get those neurotransmitters back up working. Get the serotonin level back up, your dopamine level back up, get the norepinephrine level back up, and get back to life. Okay, I'm going to tell you one thing. Another thing which is very important right here. You see, anybody who comes to you and makes you to understand that you have to deprive yourself of your happiness to make other people happy is giving you the wrong recipe for life and for success. Do not deprive yourself of what makes you feel good and what makes you happy. The Bible says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. If you are depressed, what can you give your neighbor? Depression? If you're isolated, what are you going to give your neighbor? Isolation? If you are joyful, you are going to give your neighbor joyfulness. If you're happy, you're going to give your neighbor happiness. If you are strong, you're going to give your neighbor strength. You can only give to somebody what you got. You cannot give to somebody what you do not have. So it is paramount that you learn to make yourself happy, to build yourself, not to create, not to betray your happiness and jeopardize your happiness for the interest of somebody else being happy, and you call that love. That is not love. That is not love.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to share this, and I hope that, as we go on, we understand what real love is. Love is sacrificial, but it's sacrificial to the point where you make yourself happy so you can make other people happy. Thank you, Essilfie.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Ako. Wow. That was a great one there. A lot of things I've picked up from what you have said. I think one of the things that leads to isolation when somebody is depressed is the fact that they've lost interest in some of the things they used to enjoy doing. For example, if you have someone who used to enjoy going clubbing or going partying maybe every weekend, and then they suddenly stop doing that, what happens next? They stay at home, right? They don't want to go anywhere. Probably they don't want to talk to somebody. And then with the fact that they lost their self-esteem, because you start feeling you are worthless. Nobody likes you, like you have said. Depression is really a huge problem. And usually I always like to look at depression as a medical condition as well, because you don't necessarily have to have a broken hand to be treated, because you may not have a broken hand, but you have a broken brain. So we have to think about our mental health equally as well as we think about our physical health. So at what point, let me go back to you, Doctor, just for a few minutes before Cham speaks. At what point does depression become chronic, or what point does it become a clinical depression? Did you get
this is a question addressed to me or to Mr. Cham?
No, to you, Doctor. Just for a few.
Yeah, I will define clinical depression as existing. Depression is not clinical depression. Just like you rightly pointed out, where the individual expresses has at least 5 symptoms within a 2-week period. All right, with one of at least one of the symptoms being either having one of the symptoms being a depressed mood or a lack of interest in things or activities that they like doing.
Okay.
Yes, so at least 5. within a 2 weeks period with one of those two which I mentioned before. That is when we can talk about that is clinical depression. Yeah. And that's the DSM-5 definition of it. Yes.
All right. So you have the DSM-5 definition of depression. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, that's DSM definition of depression.
All right. And is clinical depression, is it the same as chronic depression? Are they the same thing?
All right. Are you asking if clinical depression is the same as what?
Chronic. At what point does depression become chronic?
At what point does depression become chronic? Because even though we have clinical depression, we are talking about types of depression. You know. Yeah. So we're talking about types of depression, and there's this Harvard Health classification. Yeah. And the chronic, I guess we're talking about major. At what point the classic type called major depression? You know. Yeah. So we have to talk about major depression. I've mentioned about loss of interest in what you like doing. It is very difficult to lose interest in what you like doing. I like my fufu and eru, and suddenly I stop. I just lose interest in eating my fufu and eru. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then suddenly I lose interest in going on a favorite vacation spot with my wife. Interest in activities, you know, in affairs which are usually pleasurable. That's the word, pleasurable. A human being will not hate doing the things which he has been doing, which are pleasurable, like going on a vacation with your family or stuff like that. You suddenly lose interest in that. Whoa, there's something that is not right. So that's the type of depression which is major depression. Then we have persistent depression, which is dysthymia. We have manic depression, which is bipolar depression. We have seasonal affective depression, and then we have the depression which occurs in women, like perinatal depression and PMDD. So that major type of depression is right there. All right. Okay. But so
over to you now, Cham. We all know we've been struggling. We've been going through this pandemic, the lockdown and social distancing, quarantining, working from home, etc., etc. So, how do you think this COVID period has affected our mental health? Because I know it has.
Okay. Thank you. So before I address that, there's a couple of things which doctor said, which I would like to look at from another angle. I mean, he spoke, and I almost shouted amen at some point. Yeah. But there are certain things which he mentioned, which I would just like to add something to it, or to look at it from a different angle. The first thing I want to say is he alluded the higher rate of the higher rate of depression in men to women's inaccess to lethal forms, or to things that will effectuate suicide, which raises questions, not just to me, but to many other people who are watching, I believe, because the proportion of suicides from very lethal sources or methods is very, very low. It's usually, most of the time, soft methods that people use for suicide. So it raises that question. And then the question about support, because I understand that, for example, during this COVID, a lot of countries opened hotlines for domestic violence, for all forms of people who can get into depression, and most of these hotlines were women oriented. So what don't we think also that we need to increase the support that the community, the society generally gives to men? I mean, take UK for example. The number of deaths from prostate cancer, for example, is higher than the number of deaths from breast cancer. But the amount of support for breast cancer is way higher than the amount of support for prostate cancer. It's not a negative comparison. It's just to shed light on the fact that maybe we should think also about improved support for men in the society, increased support for men in the society. And then you made a statement which is very fashionable. You said, men, swallow your pride, shove your testosterone down your throat. Without mincing words, that's an expression of the man expandability, which at the end of the day you condemned. You condemned man expandability. You said that it's okay to cry. You said that it's okay to be weak for a man. But yet you said we should shove in our pride and shove in our testosterone. This kind of language is very common in today's society, and it's the prelude for negligence when it comes to issues of men's mental health. Is the prelude, is the first tool for everybody. That man get problem, that's sad, that dismissive way, it's okay to not have figured it out sometimes when approaching somebody who is at the verge of or in depression. It's perfectly okay for them to not have figured it out. That's why they are depressed. That's why we are saying that they are sick in quotes. It's okay for them to be depressed. And sometimes, and in many cases I've experienced that, the pressure we put on people who are in one form of depression or mental challenge or the other, the pressure we put on them to speak, in some cases, aggravates the situation they are already in. The pressure we put on people to speak. So you come in, you are expecting that you ask a couple of questions, they'll answer these couple of questions, and you use their answer for a diagnosis, and you tell them what exactly is wrong with them. The pressure to speak is also challenging. And it's okay, and like somebody told me one time, silence when you're treating issues of depression and mental health, silence is an answer, a valid one.
Yes.
Somebody just wants to be silent. Somebody just wants to be away from the noise sometimes. I mean, this is just adding to all the wonderful things you have said, because I was literally taking notes on the issues which you mentioned, which I really learned a lot from. But I just thought that I should also look at a couple of these things from this other angle, so that we are aware of the alternatives and of the options that are available to us.
Yep.
So we can also consider increased support for men. We can also consider learning whatever language it is that they are speaking in their form of depression, And then when it comes to the COVID situation, without lying, without being biased, I am very confident that gender-based violence will skyrocket. Majority of the oppressors will probably be men. And I don't think it will be because these are animals. It will be accumulated stress, which doctor has already listed. The pressure of financial loss, the pressure of instability, the pressure of isolation and being alone and not being able to talk with friends and take a bottle of beer or two with a couple of colleagues, and all that. But also, just to add, that the pressure of working from home. Have you ever noticed that working from home, you literally work more? You find yourself doing more. I wake up in the morning and the first thing I do is get on my computer.
Yeah.
And if I was in the office, by 5 p.m., I'm off. But because I'm at home and I don't have to worry about getting home. By 6 p.m., 6:30, I have to just touch this thing and then I'll drop it. I'll just touch this thing and then I'll drop it.
Yeah.
It happens during this COVID. This kind of thing, you find, that's why, again, it comes back to support. That's why you see some organizations are organizing seminars and trainings and coping strategies for people who are working from home, men in particular who are working from home, to be able to let, and what do they do in these trainings? Most of the times they emphasize that you are not the entire solution. Don't take it upon yourself that if you don't cut that T or dot that I, the world is going to end. You know, sometimes be intentional. No is a valid answer. Sorry, you're at home now, right? Yes. Can you just go ahead and send me this email at 8 p.m.? No. You know, no, it's a no. It's like it's a no, and a very confident no that should come from you. But these are things which we are not aware of, and because we have had the culture, especially some of us, especially people who just come into the West here, who have that job fright, particularly men who have job fright. You know, you don't know what you're going to do that is going to annoy somebody, that is going to let somebody disfavor you, that is going to cause you to lose your job. These pressures are available for in this COVID period, and then the support, which I've talked about, support from the government. I've talked about some support from the companies. I've talked about what I want to talk about now is support from our spouses or our family or whoever it is that is close to us. Support from them. Women, generally, we have established that they express themselves more. So the woman is the one who is going to insult you head to toe. You know, it's okay to step out of the house. You know, step out, just walk randomly. You cannot sit there and tell somebody that if you keep running away from your problems, the problems will never be solved. And it's okay to step out. It's okay to even be silent. It's okay to have a problem with somebody and not want to tell them, if that's your coping strategy. I'm talking about coping strategy and support. There's a lot of coping strategies that men are adopting, which they think is helping, but in the long run is harming them. Don't be surprised that the level of consumption of alcohol during this lockdown will increase. The level of consumption of alcohol will skyrocket. The level of arrogance and sensitivity in the atmosphere, especially for family people, will increase. That arrogance is not to you or to your family. It's an outburst of the things that are going on inside you. But still, we cannot force those things out of you. They will come out when they need to come out. That's why the United Nations moved from what we call Millennium Development Goals to Sustainable Development Goals. Millennium Development Goals were designed by them and imposed on us. But then they adopted the approach they call participatory approach to development, where in Sustainable Development Goals, you seek the solution from the sick person. So you come in and you say, how can I help you? And if I just don't want to talk at that time, that's one way to help me. Sit there in the silence and let's just think random things. There are some people, and when I got this, I neglected it, but I've come to see that it helps. Have you ever known that imagining that you are better helps to relax your mind?
Yes.
Have you ever been walking around and you thought that you picked £1 million and you made plans in your mind how you spent that money? You like in your mind, you have distributed that money to your family members, you have built projects, and you're smiling alone on the road. You're not crazy. That's a coping strategy. Think about the thing that you would have rather done if the one that you are about to do or is in front of you is a bit difficult for you to do. You know, so I'm stressing support for men, patience and understanding from their immediate families and society or whoever it is that's around them, allowing them to express themselves in the best way they can. Because sometimes, not just for men, when you put pressure on someone to talk, it escalates the issue.
Yeah.
It escalates the issue. So that's to me, those are the issues that COVID has come to add to the already complex situation of increasing depression rate in men. But I think, again, like I said, I think there is hope. There's really much hope. Doctor mentioned a lot of things that you can do. Like I said, when he was talking, I almost said amen. It was almost like, I was connecting to what he was saying. And things like this platform that you've brought up, allowing people to be able to start having this conversation, start knowing that we can talk about issues about men, and we can be patient to hear what the men have to say.
Yes.
Start finding a way to destroy this man expandability. The man is able. Sometimes we blame the man for that thought, but he's trying to defend a title bestowed on him by society. He's able. He's that man a man, no. So left and right, here and there. Talking about these tragic events that happened in America.
Mm-hmm.
The level of blaming that I have seen online is horrible. What do you think that does to the abandoned kids? They are hearing things about their parents which they have never heard.
Yeah.
They are finding themselves in a position which they have never found themselves. How do you think it helps or it affects their own mental health? I, for one, believe that there is a lack of understanding between these two people, these two victims, because both of them were victims, both the one murdered and the one who committed suicide. There was a lack of understanding between them, and that lack of understanding has escalated. That's not the first couple to divorce. That's not the first couple to experience what they experienced. But something else, probably COVID, shut down, like Doctor was saying.
Mm-hmm.
We will never know unless we went closer to ask further questions. Unless after the beer and the Takam, you'll be all right, we're able to knock his door in the middle of the night and say, bro, how far? And if he just wants to smoke, I mean, I will not encourage somebody to smoke, but if that's your coping strategy, why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
Mm-hmm.
So really, I'll stress again, support from our establishment, support from our immediate family, support from our friends, platforms to express ourselves, and then allowing us to express ourselves in the best way that we can.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Cham. Yeah. Thank you so much. That's so brilliantly explained. And as far as the couple, well, most often in situations like that, or when there's a problem, normally there's someone to blame. That's one aspect of human being. And as our sister Dorothy Diamond says, there was something fundamentally wrong with the whole situation. And that thing that was fundamentally wrong, they had problems mentally. So, and it's just the two of them. The person murdered and the person who committed suicide. They are the only two people who can exactly tell us what happened or what was happening in that home or between the two of them. And one of the things I said is that the death now was physical, but I think there was already emotional death between the two of them. They had already died a long time ago, and that may as well be one of the side effects of depression. You lose interest in things around you. You can actually lose interest in people as well. Then at some point you may feel like there's really no need living again, and if you've lost that will to live, you won't be able to value life around you. And in that state of in that depressive state, you tend to look at the other person, especially if it is that person causing the problem. You tend to look at that person as nothing. So that may have been what happened between the two of them, but we don't really know. All we pray is for the safety and the well-being of those children they left they left behind. And that incident is one of the reasons that I thought it is good for you guys, you men, to have an avenue, to have a space where you can express, you can talk about such things. And because I know mental illness, mental health is one of those things that's silently killing us, both men and women. It affects us differently, but it kills. Mental illness is an invisible disability that kills. It doesn't just kill you on a single day, but it kills you gradually. Because you may sit today and you hear this person, that person, the celebrity has died. You may be wondering what suddenly happened, but I just saw her, I just saw him looking so happy, smiley yesterday or last month. What suddenly happened? That person, the person's coping mechanism may have just been that smile, putting on that smile, trying to be extremely happy, but they may be dying, they may be crying within, crying for help. So listening, talking. There's one thing you said, Cham, about silence may be a coping mechanism for some people, but silence as well may also be an indication that this person is depressed, because you may be depressed and you shut down. You don't see the need to talk to anyone. You don't see the need to express yourself. You shut down, or you end up burying yourself in bottle of beers because of depression or substance abuse, and or maybe some people engage into unnecessary sex, having sex with everyone, or pressurizing their men or their women to have sex all the times, which may be one of the reasons why during this lockdown, couples may be having problems as well, and maybe leading to domestic violence. And doctor, I want to give this question. I just want to mention it, and I don't know what you think about it. A couple of months ago, I came across a comment that someone made on Facebook that sex can actually cure depression. What's the relationship between those two? Because I know depression can actually affect somebody's libido. So how is it that in another way, having more sex may make you less depressed? What's the relationship?
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, we're talking about sex affecting mood, you know.
No, depression affecting mood.
Sex makes you feel good. It's one of the things that practices, human practice, that was embraced by everybody in the whole wide world. Okay. You know, if you want to play with man or with the woman, play with anything bordering on sex is so crucial. It makes you feel good. It releases beautiful things. Releases a nice endorphins. I said something. Depression is when those neurotransmitters are down. Serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine. Serotonin is a feel-good chemical, James, you know. Another feel-good thing that's dopamine, you know, it increases their levels in your brain. So it is sex, and the sex drive will increase those chemicals in your brain, which will act contrary to the low levels of serotonin or dopamine, and take it to a level where you start feeling better. Because Mental health, and we can talk about this another day, is all about a game of neurotransmitters in the brain. It's all about neurotransmitters. Why it's about schizophrenia, or we're talking about bipolar disorders where you have mania and depression. It's all about neurotransmitter imbalances in the brain. Just like epilepsy, seizure disorder is about potassium channels in the brain, sodium channels linked up in the brain, misfiring. All right, that is important. So, I mean, and one thing I always say talk about is, we talk about hormones for females, luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, and all that stuff for male testosterone. When it comes to mental health, it's called neurotransmitters, neurotransmitter mechanism. So it's going to help you. And then it's a feel good thing, you're going to feel better. When you have sex, you feel good. Yeah, when you have sex, you feel good. That is the fact. And after having sex, you feel calm, you feel good, and you feel like resting. You don't have sex and then get up and feel like being aggressive. Am I saying something? Can you relate to that? No, of course you can relate to that. Come on, Cham.
My spine.
Yeah, you don't have sex and then get out there. You want to go and fight.
Oh, you were asking me to confirm how I feel after sex on live video.
It starts from here. Yes, that's what we have. We have people in relationships, married people. We them better have sex than get out there to fight. It's better to have sex than fighting, okay? Than contending and being moody about every little thing and in the house, husband and wife, boyfriend, girlfriend. It's better to have sex, battle it out there in bed than with your hands and than with your mind, so you can emotionally or physically abuse someone. All right, it's better. Yes, so it's a good way. It's a good way of doing it. Does it cure? Because there are many other coping mechanisms, but for some it can be a good coping mechanism because there are good and bad coping mechanisms. Cham mentioned something about some men they drink. Yeah, so it's not drinking. Drinking is okay. He's right. But actually, some men abuse substances. They abuse substances. They abuse PCP. They abuse PCP. They abuse stimulants like cocaine, like amphetamine. They abuse heroin. They abuse LSD. They abuse those things to cope with their depression. Depression of losing a job, not having a house to stay in, not balancing the bills together. Depression of their daughter. That's the man. The man's daughter turns against him because the wife has an impact in that. They might get depressed, stuff like that. So we cope very bad, negative with the bad coping skills. But one good coping skills, in a house, like one good coping skill during this pandemic where they restricted people from getting out there, you have to stay at home. You are a married couple, have sex, and it's good. All right, it's good because it releases the positive, and things make you feel good, makes you feel better. But do not dwell too much on drinking too much, because I can imagine that some men who have stockpiled the whole thing from blue label to black label to red label, that have done all the Hennessy classifications and everything. No, there are better ways to cope. Watch TV during this pandemic, or get Netflix. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, one of the advice to do it was a good one. Get Netflix. It's cheap, affordable. You have all the
network
and watch stuff with your family. They work because you're going to film all day long. And this is the funny thing, Cham, I know you're going to laugh about this one. It's not easy to live together, and even if you're living with your wife, it's not easy. So this is how we fix it. I'm happy. I get up in the morning. My wife uses my tea, makes my coffee. She likes coffee. I like coffee. She inducted me into the Hall of Fame of coffee drinkers. I'm cool with that. So I take my cup of
Can't believe I missed that story.
Hey, she's going to work and I'm going to work. I'm cool. I'm thinking about the people. That's diversity. It's diversity. Now, I don't think my wife, okay, but it's diversity. I don't have a problem with my wife, but just going to work is diversity. I'm going to drive. I do what human beings do. I go to work, I argue with some, we make up, get jobs done, we figure ways to move the company forward and all that stuff. And then I'm tired. I have my lunch. We have meetings, and I drive back home. When I come back home, this is a family. Hey, my son, how you doing? And everything. That is a routine. And then suddenly I cannot leave the house to go work. And I don't have an issue with my wife or with anybody. I have to stay at home. My routine has changed, and I am having a conversation with my wife every day. It's not meant to be like that, So you have to look for ways by which you are going to, we're talking about men, women, and stuff like that. Ways are you going to cope with that, you know, and how you're going to get stuff done, how you're going to inject something positive and beautiful in your life. Coping mechanisms. How do you adjust? The ability to adjust to situations which are ever changing in your life. That is going to create a comfort zone for you through which you can drive all your activities. You can build a foundation for growth. You can excel. So the pandemic shows what you're going to do. It's not affecting just, it's affecting everybody. All right, but that some are going to be committing suicide. I'm sorry to say that. Some are more anxious. Some are going to have, you know, co-occurring disorders. A co-occurring disorder in mental health is, you know, disorders like existing with like substance abuse and mental illness. So the mental illness causes people to abuse substances, and people who abuse substances have a probability of having more suffering mental illness, who have more co-occurring disorders, because those with mental illness are abusing substances, and those who are abusing substances are having more of that mental illness. So there's a lot going on. Yeah. So have sex. Do positive things.
Sorry.
Watch TV. Yes, Cham.
I just wanted to add on those coping strategies, coping mechanisms, that it's important for us to identify triggers. You know, yes, it's important for us to identify triggers. So there are some people who some part of their work induces depression. So or some part of their home induces depression, or some aspect of their family or something induces depression. I'll give you an example. There is for an engineer who has had episodes of horrible accidents, the part of planning his architectural work, he enjoys it very much. But every time he's about to cross the bridge or he's about to go digging, he remembers what that machine did to somebody, and then he starts to slump. When you identify these triggers, sometimes it's your job and it's difficult to not do these things. If you identify these triggers, identify your energy patterns. So some people work best early in the morning. Some people work best in the afternoon. Some people work best in the evening. When the trigger is something you cannot do without, you have to face it. Then program to face it when you are at your optimum. So if you work best in the morning, and one of the triggers is reading emails, then the best time to read the emails will be that morning when you're at your optimum, and then it will have a lesser impact. Somebody like me, after lunch, I'm basically down. My performance drops. I'm very effective in the morning. So if, for example, that aspect of my job, which really causes me depression, if for example, I'm supposed to face it, I'll obviously program to face it in the morning when I'm at my optimum. If I try it in the afternoon, coupled with the fact that I'm already suffering from lower performance, I'm bound to get further into the depression.
Okay.
So we have to be able to identify our triggers and identify how we can cope with them. If it is a particular thing that your wife does, and it's only when you are around her that she does it, identify when is your best moment. Go around her so that she can do whatever it is. At those best moments, the potential for you to be harmful is by far less. You know, so it's good for us to identify our triggers, identify our energy patterns, and then we know how to program ourselves. You know, planning really, especially during this COVID, is going to help a lot of men to cope with depression. Be able to figure out your day. It's easy to not plan because you roll from the bed to whatever you're doing, to the bed, to, you know, you are just at home. So it's like you have all the time. You end up doing either very little or too much. So it's important for us as men during this period, especially, to really plan our work. plan our work. And then I was going to talk about some of those coping mechanisms which we were talking about. We talked about alcohol and happy substances, let me call them that way, which can have the potential to be abused. But there's something which we did not mention, which is very important. We cannot underestimate the potential of good news to lift one's spirit. Hearing good news. For example, if you are a boss, this is a good time to promote your staff, because it will lift their spirit. It will help with if you receive any good news. So even if you are not waiting for good news, decide to see good news in certain things. So when you wake up, you can decide to set yourself targets. When you achieve those targets, it will make you feel happy. It will serve as your own good news. If you're not due for, say, promotion, or if you have not written any exams, you're waiting for the results, that will make you excited. Or if you're not expecting any amount of money, if that money enters now, thank God, it will save some depression. Not because you have money to spend, but because good news has come in. So for a Christian, which I am, I'll say praise time. Praise time is very important, especially for men. You will be surprised that when you go to many choirs, you see only ladies in it. Maybe this is a good time to join the online choir department.
Send us a
I'm
link.
seeing,
If you have a link,
I'm giving an example, but I'm giving an example. All I'm saying is praise time. Just take out time and just be appreciative of whatever you've got. Doctor, wake up one morning when you're not feeling like it and start admiring your wife, or go back to your wedding pictures and look at them, or get to your job and then find the application letter you wrote for this job, read it again. You see how you appreciate the fact that, oh, this is what I wrote that got these people's mind and they had to employ me. It makes you feel good. I'm focusing on the feel goods. We have already mentioned a lot of them: alcohol, drugs, sex, and all that. I'm just giving another alternative.
Yeah.
So prayers, meditation, whoever your God is, on whatever you believe in, it's a good time to draw closer and communion more, and just focus on the bright things of life. Really, that's going to be a very great coping strategy.
Thank you so much, Cham. That's very insightful. Thank you. And we are almost we've taken a very long time today. Normally we aim for at most an hour, but because our topic it's a very interesting one, and we really want more people to get talking, to give a voice to this depression and suicide. So we don't mind going up to an hour. Even if there's someone there who is not able to watch, you can still watch a replay. And I just want to thank you guys for watching. And if you have any questions, put them down. Doctor will answer. Cham will be there to answer as well. So depression affects each and every one of us, men, women, children. We have to be able to look out for triggers. And I know we mentioned, Dr. Ako and Cham, you mentioned about alcohol. Yes. Some people do abuse alcohol or substance abuse when they are depressed, and just that alone can also be a sign of depression. And I also know that when people are depressed, they can actually make very rash decisions sometimes. Yeah, it's true that depression can bring in problems as well, especially if both parties do not, especially with couples, if they don't really understand how the depression is affecting each other. It can actually lead to maybe separations or divorce. And all one nod. What I will say from my own point of view is, during this period, if you are suffering with depression, you have to be very careful with the type of decisions you make, because at some point you may feel like there's really no need being in the relationship you are in, or at some point you may feel like there's really no need being in the job that you are in, because you don't feel like doing anything in it. And sometimes the only thing you feel like to do is to quit. But quitting most often is not the best thing to do. However, there are marriages, there are relationships which are the cause of someone's depression, same as there are jobs which are the cause of someone's depression. So if anyone is depressed, you have to be very careful not to make any quick decisions during that period. You have to sit, think, and really ask, am I in the right state of mind now to make this decision or not? So since we have just 10 minutes to go, one thing we haven't talked about, one thing we haven't touched is any illness, as we all know, has a treatment or has a cure. And therefore, depression should have a treatment. Depression should have a cure. So, doctor, at what point does someone have to go to the next step of having treatment? When I say treatment, I mean medication, I mean antidepressants, because I know there's therapy, I know there's talk therapy, there are so many of them out there. But at what point do you guys have to prescribe maybe amitriptyline, sertraline, etc., etc.? Did you hear? Hold on. It's me. Are you there?
The network is poor.
Yeah, the network is not too good, so it's not actually allowing me to unmute.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Okay.
fine.
So, yeah, depression, as just like many mental health conditions, are treated, can be managed using, it's not just one therapy; it's combination therapy, and that combination therapy is using medication and therapy, and medication and therapy. But, somebody, and the reason why I'm saying if you have medication, those who can take medication.
Network is not.
We'll talk about antidepressants. All right.
Yeah.
Many classes of and then therapy, of course. You need a therapist. Now, some people believe that they want to take medication, others believe that it's just therapy. I understand therapy works for some, but if somebody going through a divorce, and is clinically depressed, while medications might play an important role in regulating those neurotransmitter imbalance, because the main important things about those medications is to regulate your neurotransmitter imbalance so that they get to a level where you're fine. But talk to somebody, because that's one of the causes of depression. You lost somebody, it was a traumatic experience to lose somebody under the circumstances and depending on the timing as well. And you're grieving, you're going through all the 5 stages of grief, and then you begin to grieve beyond. That is what we call prolonged grief. We've come to discover that, it can cause depression. So how do you handle that too? The person can take medication, right? But the person needs therapy as well. For example, I'll give just an example, like one of the stages of grief. For the stages you have denial. Now, not in this order, there can be any order among them. Can be denial, can be anger, can be guilt, then there can be bargaining, and then finally acceptance. They can be in other form, must not be that same form. So you've gone through the denial stage. That person died, so where I not be noticing this family. Me and you will be there yesterday. I spoke with him on the phone. Yeah, you go through the stage of denial, all right? And then you are angry about the situation why the person died. If he took better care of himself, this would have happened, and this and that. If this didn't happen, you are angry about it for one reason or another. And then you get to the point of guilt. You can feel guilty about that death. And then that guilt and bargaining phase, that bargaining phase is very important. That's where a lot of people get stuck. A lot of people get stuck on bargaining phase, for example, and they're feeling guilty about something. If I had sent my auntie the $300 that she asked for 3 weeks ago instead of 1 week ago, she might still be alive. So you are taking responsibility for that death. And that can do some damage to you.
Yeah.
On the long term. If I did not send like this one with patients would say, if I did not send my 19-year-old son to go buy me cigarettes across the street, he would not have picked a stray bullet. And attributes the demise of his only son, 19-year-old son, to the fact that he sent him to go and buy cigarettes across the street, and then there was a shooting in the rough neighborhood, and he died. You're bargaining. It's very rough, and this man has been drinking alcohol like forever. He cannot bring himself out of that. So what is he going to do? How much can you medicate this man, like in terms of antidepressants, that will make him feel good? You got to talk to the man. We have to reach out to the man's mind and tell him that, look, this was not your fault. Therapy is important. So combination therapy does the trick. Now, as far as medication, we have medication in different classes. Different classes. And one important thing I want to talk about medication before I align them is that it is not just about taking those medications. Antidepressants have some very serious withdrawal effects, and they have some very serious side substances. And one thing I've done is that many patients who are depressed, who take antidepressants, self-medicate. All right? Many patients who take antidepressants, self-medicate. They are depressed and they are coping with LSD. They're depressed, they're coping with PCP. They're depressed, they're coping with amphetamine. They're depressed, they're coping with weed. Weed is what a lot of people say they're doing because it's legal. Who comes out there and tells you I'm doing weed means it's really doing a lot of. So that implies that we are talking about the setting in of a co-occurring disorder, because that patient is depressed, that patient is taking antidepressants, and because of depression, the patient is also coping with some stuff by the side, self-medicating, and that leads to something else, more neurotransmitter imbalances going on, and makes it worse. So yes, antidepressants are there. Now, among the antidepressants, there are so many classes of antidepressants. All right, we can talk of the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Like fluoxetine, like paroxetine, like citalopram, like Zoloft, which a lot of clients take. They take all these antidepressants, and these ones are selective for serotonin also, but there are those which are non-selective that many clients take. There are also tricyclic antidepressants that clients take. You have different classes of antidepressants, but at the antidepressants I want to take, you have to look. One important thing before I go forward to enumerate the other classes is that we have to be careful to understand that the antidepressant that we take, we have to check the side effects of such antidepressants. All right, you are going to give, for example, SSRI, selective serotonin inhibitors. One of the most important side effects, for example, is sexual dysfunction. You're not going to be careful how you give an antidepressant to a client who is of childbearing age, who want to have children, or who wants to enjoy having sex. And then the patient will come to me and say, "Man, I'm taking that medication, it's working, but it's not standing." And I know what he's talking about. This erectile dysfunction.
All right.
So he got frustrated that it's not standing and he's not enjoying sex anymore. All right. And he does not know that other classes of antidepressants.
Okay.
So stop taking the antidepressants. Now, this is an important part, a very important part. When a patient is taking these antidepressants, which are very powerful, and then suddenly stops taking the antidepressants, you're going to initiate what you call withdrawal symptoms.
Yeah.
Now, this is the worst thing. That patient was taking the antidepressant, was working with the side effects, and then suddenly the side effects are there, and then he's not feeling anything. But this stuff is not helping me. No, it takes a particular period of time before the action of that antidepressant kicks in. So there is education onto how this antidepressant works. It takes this period of time for the action to kick in. And if it kicks in for A at this time, it doesn't mean it's going to kick up for you at this time because you are not like A. All right, take some time for that to kick. And then suddenly If you are experiencing sexual dysfunction, there's another class of antidepressants which you can take where you cannot experience, sexual dysfunction. The client does not know that. The patient doesn't know that. We have to tell the patient that, so that it do not stop suddenly. Do not stop abruptly taking antidepressant. You have to withdraw side effects, you get worse. And then he stopped taking, now he's abusing substances. The whole thing is messed up. You are introducing a new disease component, and you have a new mental health component, and then things with this diagnosis and everything. So what I encourage for the purpose of discussion at time, which I'll not go much, is that combination therapy is the best. But look at the problem. If it is unemployment that is making you to be depressed, let's talk about unemployment and handle it. If it's lack of a job, if it's lack of a housing, let's see how you can. If it's because you're grieving family, let's say, if it's a divorce, let's see how we can talk about that. It's because of a murder that took place somewhere of which you are innocent, that trying to send you to jail. Let's talk about that. So let's do therapy and let's encourage them to do therapy. Yeah.
All right. Brilliantly explained. Thank you so much. While we are just about to round up, Cham, any last word, any final word? We are just over 2 hours now, so let's quickly round up for the next 5 minutes. Just last word for our viewers.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm very happy that we had this conversation, and actually, some of the things we have discussed here have even sparked me more. That there is a lot which we are not doing, especially for the male child. I mean, happy Father's Day to every father out there, every man out there, potential father as well. And it's a humble plea from us that society and women in particular, our women, should cease from invalidating the pain of men and cease from the practice of man expandability, and know that even though we express it in different ways, we do feel pain, and yeah, we should pay attention to our pain as well. And making men better will make women who relate with those men better as well. So it's a legitimate path to follow in the fight for equality and justice in the world. Yeah. So thanks very much for having me, and happy Father's Day.
Thank you so much, Cham. It was my pleasure having you on our show today, and looking forward to seeing you in the next edition next week. So I'll sign off with you, but don't go. Just wait for me. So, Dr. Ako, final word, and thank you so much for honoring this.
Yes, thank you, Cham. Listen, Cham, it was really great, talking to Cham and talking to you, AC, talking to all of you out there. It's a very rough time we're going through, so I will just advise us that we are not thinking about making money right now. If you think about making money right now, you're missing the point. We think about being alive, staying alive in this pandemic. It's not over yet. So the final words is, AC, you're doing a great job. I really appreciate what you're doing. And I believe that we are going to unravel the mystery behind mental health and, bring that awareness to a lot of people who don't talk about it, especially in Africa, where, the knowledge, attitude, and practice of mental health is still very poor, and where the health facilities are underfunded, and then mental health is being neglected in many African countries, all over Africa. But I want to encourage you to stay safe during this pandemic. Please respect the social distancing modalities put out there. Make sure that you put on your face mask when you get out there in gatherings, and be cautious of, the number of people in any gathering you find yourself in. Just be safe, all right? Better safe than sorry, okay? And I look forward to seeing the second part of this 4-part series, which we're carrying out in the, Sanglin show with Asimbe. So it is Dr. Ako right here. I wish you have a great weekend. And hey, AC, tomorrow I'll be in the reg. I'm shooting a music video tomorrow, all right? I'm shooting a music video tomorrow on one of my songs. So I keep myself busy working, doing stuff all the time. That is my coping skill. That way I don't get bored or anything. So when it's done, I'm going to share it with you later on, all right? So take care now. Okay, have a great one.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for staying with us and listening. Hope you must have learned 1, 2, or 3 things from this video. And if you have, share, like our page for more information. At the Sandy Show, we aim at being the voice of hope and raising advocacy to those who face issues most often regarded as taboo or most often regarded as sensitive or very emotional topics to talk about. I know it is very necessary to give a voice to these things because most of these things that we do not talk about are things which hurt us. I know that once you give a voice to these, you can save a life, you can change a life. So today we've talked about suicide and depression in men. We've looked at some of the causes, we've looked at some of the reasons why someone may be depressed and they end up committing suicide. We've also looked at coping mechanisms and treatments, either medications or therapy or combined. So this is a 4-part series on men's health, body, mind, and soul. And this is the first edition. Our next edition is on the 27th of June, still featuring Dr. Ako and some other guest speakers. Thank you so much for being here with us. Have a nice weekend. Stay safe, stay blessed, and love you always. It's AC. Thank you.